I started my night shift at the hospital a few weeks ago. I was still figuring things out. The halls felt empty after hours, and the buzzing lights made me uneasy. I had always wanted to be a nurse to help people, but the quiet made me second-guess my choice. On my second shift, I found a locked door in the basement. I couldn't find it on any blueprints. I thought there might be equipment or storage inside. Then I heard strange thumping noises from behind the door. My heart raced. I looked around, but everything seemed normal. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. As the week went on, odd things started happening. I heard whispers in the halls. I walked past patients who claimed to see shadowy figures by their beds. Just a few nights later, an elderly man screamed. He kept saying someone was watching him. I tried to soothe him, but something inside me felt anxious. I talked to some other nurses. They shared their own strange experiences. One said she saw a figure darting past in the break room. Another whispered about lights flickering in empty rooms. Each story sent chills down my spine. Then I stumbled upon dusty old medical charts while organizing the storage room. They were yellowed and hidden at the back. I shouldn't have been looking at them, but I couldn't help it. The records detailed mysterious deaths that happened at the hospital. All the patients were admitted late at night and died just days later. I looked closer and noticed the dates were aligned with where the locked room sat on the plans. That twisted my stomach. I had a gut feeling the locked room had something to do with these deaths. I didn't have proof, but too many strange events were piling up. I decided to gather my courage and check the room again. My heart pounded as I approached it. As I stood outside the door, the thumping sounded again. It felt louder, almost frantic this time. I knocked, hoping someone would answer. Silence surrounded me like an unwanted blanket. I waited, and the air felt heavy. I thought about calling security, but what would I say? Suddenly, the thumping stopped. I took a step back. My heart raced. I felt like something was in the dark, watching me. Then, without warning, I heard a whisper behind me. I spun around but saw no one. I didn't understand what was happening. The dread crawled into my bones. Then I heard the voice again, clear as day, asking, "Why did you come here?" I glanced back at the door. It was still locked. I couldn't explain the darkness enveloping me. It felt like it wanted me to go away. But deep inside, I knew it wouldn't let me. I stumbled back from the door, my heart racing. I wanted to run, but something kept me rooted in place. I recalled the elderly man's words. Someone was watching. Maybe it was my imagination, but the fear felt too real. A flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned quickly but saw only the empty hallway stretching behind me. I felt foolish for standing here, but my feet wouldn't move. The silence pressed down, heavy and thick. I forced myself to breathe. I checked my watch. It was approaching midnight. That's when the night feels longest. I turned back to the locked door, half expecting it to yield to me. But it didn't. Then I remembered the old charts. Maybe they held a clue. I couldn't let fear win. I needed answers. I hurried back to the storage room. The lights buzzed overhead, casting shadows that danced on the walls. The medical charts were still there, waiting. I pulled a few more out and flipped through pages. The entries were haunting. Deaths, unexplained conditions, patients who vanished and left only questions behind. In the midst of skimming through the records, one name stood out. A patient named Helen Marks, admitted on the very night of one of the deaths, just days before. The next entry was a note scribbled in the margin. Unresponsive. Possible connection to room 17. My hands shook. Room 17. That was the basement door. I felt the cold creep up my spine. Had she known something? Did she see something before she died? The questions twisted my stomach further. I had to find out. I retraced my steps, the buzzing lights now feeling more threatening than ever. Each corner I rounded felt darker. When I reached the locked door, I took a deep breath. The thumping returned, a steady beat echoing behind it. This time, it felt more like a heartbeat. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Is anyone there?" The whisper started again. answers mixed with low murmurs. It wasn't just one voice, it was many. My pulse quickened. I pressed my ear against the door, hoping to hear more, but the voices faded away. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light seeping from the bottom of the door. I stepped back, feeling a rush of panic. It wasn't just a flicker. It was bright, erratic. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling. The darkness around me felt alive, almost sentient. I thought I heard a footstep behind me. But when I looked back, nothing. The hospital felt like a maze, shifting and twisting. I wanted to scream but held it in. Then the light at the door dimmed, and with it the thumping ceased. The silence returned, filled only with the sound of my ragged breathing. I took a step back, fear blooming wildly inside me. I couldn't ignore this anymore. I needed to know what was behind that door. But before I could gather the courage, the lights flickered and went out. Total darkness surrounded me, and I heard a new sound. A low, unsettling chuckle from just beyond the door. My heart dropped. I was not alone anymore. The darkness swallowed me whole. I stood frozen, unable to see anything, my breath coming in shallow gasps. That chuckle, did it belong to a person or something else? I forced myself to focus, to shake off the panic. There had to be a way out. Then, a light flickered back on, a glimmer of hope. Just overhead, the fluorescent bulbs hummed to life. I caught my breath and glanced back at the door. The brightness spilled out, a weak circle cutting through the shadows. I peered intently, nothing moved, but the laughter lingered in my mind, echoing as if hidden memories were lurking in the corners. What was behind that door? I felt the urge to flee, to run as far away from this place as possible. But the need for answers rooted me to the spot. I squinted, forcing my courage to the surface. I inched closer to the door, feeling the cool metal with my fingers. Was it locked? I turned the handle. It didn't budge. I wanted to scream in frustration. Please, I just want to know. Nothing answered. Just silence, thick and enveloping. But then I heard it. A low creaking sound behind me. I froze again, my heart pounding. I turned slowly, almost dreading what I might find. The hallway was still empty. I stepped away from the door, determined not to let my fear win. I needed to get more information. I recalled the other patient notes I had skimmed through. There were other names, other mysteries. Maybe Helen was not the only one tied to room 17. I turned sharply and made my way back to the storage room. As I rifled through the charts, my fingers trembling, I tried to remain calm. There had to be something else. But the tension in the air felt tangible, like something was coiling tighter and tighter around me. I dug deeper into the stack, looking for names tied to that basement room. Finally, I found another entry. Richard Lawson. He had been admitted just weeks before Helen, under similar circumstances. I flipped back to the first page and my breath caught. His record detailed unexplainable incidents. Flashes of light, shadows moving on their own. Things that sounded all too familiar. My hands shook harder. Why hadn't I seen this before? Richard's notes mentioned a peculiar connection with something in the hospital walls. I felt a thrill of fear mixed with curiosity. What was it that they shared? I clung to the thought like a lifeline. A crash echoed from down the hallway, snapping me back to reality. My heart raced again. I glanced toward the door leading to room 17. Had I been heard? Someone might still be watching me. The thought was suffocating. With a newfound urgency, I shoved the charts back into place. I needed to gather whatever information I could and get out. That door was no longer just a door. It was a warning. And whatever lay beyond it was ready to claim its next victim. As I bolted for the exit, the overhead lights flickered again. I turned to one side, hearing whispers grow louder in the air. I was not alone. No, I murmured, realizing the shadows had grown. I needed to leave. But when I reached the exit, I felt a tug at my mind, a pull back toward room 17. It was calling me, and somehow I had to answer. I stopped at the threshold, uncertainty gnawing at me. The urge to flee battled with an insatiable curiosity. The whispers wrapped around me, drawing me in deeper. I hesitated, and in that moment I heard a voice. Soft, yet unmistakably clear. "Help me." My pulse quickened. Was it Richard? Was it Helen? Panic surged through me. I took a step back, straining to make sense of it all. "Who's there?" I called, voice shaky. I half expected silence in return, but the whispers intensified, almost a chorus now, layered over each other like a haunting melody. I was losing my grip on reality. I took a breath and turned back towards the room. The door was still sealed tight, but the air felt different, thick and charged. As I stepped closer, a glimmer danced at the edges of my vision. Light, or was it a shadow? Whatever it was, it beckoned me, swirling as if to invite me in. No more distractions, I told myself, shaking my head, but my feet felt like lead. The records, Richard, the laughter, they all swirled in my mind, amplifying my confusion. I needed clarity. Instead of escaping, I pushed the doorframe, searching for any weakness, any crevice. I wasn't ready to back down. Just before I could muster the courage to knock, I noticed something on the floor. A small piece of paper, crumpled. I reached down and carefully unfurled it. My heart dropped. It was a list, hastily written. The names scrawled across it were familiar. Helen, Richard, and 3 others I didn't recognize. Sarah, Lucas, and John. Each name was followed by a series of numbers I couldn't decipher. Then the lights went dark again. My heartbeat thundered in the silence. "No, no, no," I stammered, backing away from the room. Total darkness swallowed me, but the whispers persisted, taking on agitated tones as if sensing my fear. I stumbled, desperate for a clear path, but my back hit the wall. I was trapped. Suddenly, a faint glow flickered back to life, revealing shadows that twisted in the corners of my vision. I pressed my hands against the wall, willing myself to stay calm. I couldn't be losing it. This wasn't real. Then my gaze darted back to the door. A figure stood just beyond the threshold. I couldn't see clearly. It was just a silhouette framed by the dim light. My breath hitched as chilling recognition washed over me. It was Richard, or at least the shape of him, right there in front of me. "Come closer," he whispered, his voice eerily calm. My instincts screamed at me to run, but a part of me was rooted in place, drawn to him. There was something almost desperate in his gaze, a plea for understanding, for connection. That nagging thought from the charts nagged at me. They all needed help. But I hesitated, torn between the ominous pull to approach and the swirling dread deep within me. Then everything went dark again. My heart dropped as I heard another voice. Again, not alone. "You shouldn't have come here," it said. I felt cold fingers wrap around my wrist, pulling me toward the door. I screamed. The shadows moved closer. Someone was in the room with me. I yanked my wrist free, heart racing, and stumbled backward. The whispers morphed into frantic murmurs, swirling around me like a tempest. I was losing sense of everything. My body, the room, the reality of what was happening. "Get away from me!" I shouted into the dark, desperate to assert my will, hoping for some semblance of control. The cold fingers retreated for just a moment, but the voice lingered, echoing ominously. "Help us. We need you," it said, almost pleading this time. I couldn't discern if it was Richard or someone else. I wanted to scream again, but swallowed it down, forcing myself to breathe. I needed to think. Groping in the darkness, my fingers brushed against something hard and cold, a doorknob. I twisted it, praying it wasn't locked, and the door creaked open, letting in a sliver of muted light from the hallway. I rushed through, nearly tripping over my own feet as I stumbled into the corridor. The air felt different outside the room, fresh. I leaned against the wall, panting. "What was that?" I whispered to myself. I had to find out who else was in that room besides Richard. I glanced back, half expecting to see that silhouette again, but the door stood still, silent. That's when I noticed the chill that had settled around my shoulders, the tightness in my chest. I barely caught my breath before I turned and sprinted down the hall, heart pounding in my ears. I found myself in the staff lounge, all too familiar but now cloaked in an unsettling shadow. I spotted the flickering glow of a monitor in the corner, one of the old patient records machines. I moved toward it, praying for anything that could provide answers. The screen flickered to life as I tapped on the keys. "Help us. We need you." The words echoed in my mind, even as I pulled up the records for the names on that list. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. I typed Helen's name first, and the screen filled with text. Medical history, treatments, and something I couldn't overlook. Urgent notations that we had lost contact with her. What had I stumbled into? I clicked on another name, Lucas. Again, the same terrifying pattern emerged. Urgent calls for help, but none answered. I clicked through patient records. Then a new window popped up, revealing something disturbing. Recent treatment logs marked canceled for Richard, Helen, Sarah, Lucas, and John. Each one had followed the same pattern of disappearing care. Panic coursed through me. I had to get back. But before I could gather my thoughts, a loud clang echoed from behind me, pulling my attention. I turned, and there stood someone in the doorway, their face obscured by shadows. "I told you not to come here," the voice warned. This time I didn't hesitate. I ran. I rushed past the figure, racing down the corridor, heart racing again. I was desperate, terrified of what else I might uncover. But as I reached the end of the hall, I collided with something solid, knocking me to the ground. I looked up and froze. Richard, the real one, not the shadow from before. He loomed over me, eyes wild, lips parted as if he was about to speak. "Run!" he shouted. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline surging. Richard's urgent voice cut through my panic. "They're coming for you," he gasped, glancing back toward the staff lounge. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my heart thumping in my throat. "Where is everyone?" He grabbed my arm, his grip firm yet shaky. "They're not safe. We've got to go now." I stared into his eyes, searching for any sign of reassurance. Instead, I found fear. I didn't have time to ask questions. I pulled away, trusting his urgency. We rushed through the dimly lit corridor. As we ran, shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Voices echoed in the distance, raising the hairs on the back of my neck. "They're close," Richard muttered, breathless. "We need to split up. They won't expect that." "No, I can't leave you," I protested. "Just trust me. I'll meet you at the old break room," he insisted, already stepping away. "Now." I hesitated only a moment longer before nodding reluctantly. The fear of being caught overtook my urge to stay with him. "Be careful." I dashed down another hallway, ignoring the distant sounds of clattering and hurried footsteps. The corridor twisted and turned, each corner bringing new uncertainty. My mind raced with questions, but I couldn't afford to dwell on any of them. I focused on finding the break room. After a few minutes of running, I turned down a narrower passage, spotting the door. The break room stood just ahead, paint peeling, the window fogged from years of neglect. It felt like a refuge. Pushing the door open, I slipped inside and shut it behind me, pressing my back against the cool metal. I didn't dare breathe for a moment, listening intently. The muffled sounds of chaos outside were a constant reminder of the danger. In the dim light, I scanned the room. It looked the same, but something felt off. Then I noticed the walls. Where there should have been posters or even forgotten notes, there was only bare space. A lingering chill filled the air, making me shiver. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement in the corner. I turned sharply, squinting into the shadows. The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. "Sarah?" I exclaimed. She looked gaunt, eyes wide with fear. "Thank God," she breathed, visibly shaken. "I didn't think anyone else made it out." "Where is everyone?" I asked, panic creeping back. "They're lost," she said, voice trembling. "They took them one by one." "What do you mean, took them?" Before she could answer, loud banging erupted on the door. The lock rattled violently as shadows loomed outside. My stomach dropped. "We have to hide," I hissed. "No, we can't let them in," she cried, backing toward the far wall. "They'll come for you too." The door bucked again, the sound echoing off the walls like thunder. I glanced around, desperately searching for a way out, but all I saw were the dark corners around us. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered, and the room plunged into total blackness. "Sarah?" I called, but there was no reply. Suddenly, a chilling silence enveloped us. I felt completely alone, the pounding on the door the only sound. My heart raced as I strained to hear any sign of life, any indication of where she had gone. A new noise broke the silence, a soft whisper in the darkness. "Help us. We really need you." I froze. I held my breath, the whisper swirling around me. "Who?" I managed to croak out, my voice trembling. The silence was heavy, only broken by the relentless pounding at the door. "Help us." The voice was clearer now, almost pleading. I felt a chill, and not just from fear. "You have to listen. They're trying to trap you." I squinted into the darkness, unable to discern where the voice was coming from. My pulse raced as I considered the possibility. Was this Sarah's voice? Had she been hiding somewhere nearby? Or was it something else entirely? The door shook again, and I instinctively moved toward the sound, pressuring my back against the cold surface. With each thud, I felt more vulnerable, like I was being hunted. "Who's out there?" I shouted, hoping for a response, but the only reply came from the whisper. "This way. You can't stay here." It sounded close, jagged and desperate. Panic flooded me again. I needed to move, but where was Sarah? I didn't want to leave her behind, yet I couldn't just stand here letting whatever was outside find me. With a surge of determination, I stepped away from the door and toward the sound. "Where are you?" I called. "Where's Sarah?" "In the shadows." The voice faded momentarily, replaced by the crashing of the door. My heart leapt into my throat. It wouldn't hold much longer. "Find the others. They need you." I swallowed hard, my fear battling against the need to act. I turned, searching the dark corners of the room, but all I saw were dim outlines. No sign of Sarah. What had happened to her? I couldn't stay still. The pounding worsened, accompanied by a low growl reverberating through the walls. It sounded like nothing human. Without thinking, I bolted toward a cracked window at the far side. It might be my only chance. With shaky hands, I forced it open. The cold night air poured in, swirling around me. Just as I was about to climb out, a piercing scream echoed behind me. "No, don't!" It was Sarah's voice, clearer than before, followed by frantic thuds that sent my breath hitching in my chest. I turned back to the door, paralyzed by the sound of her distress. I hesitated, emotions flooding me. "Sarah," I shouted, but received no answer. The floor felt unstable under my feet. Adrenaline surged as I realized I couldn't wait any longer. I scrambled out the window and dropped to the ground below, wincing at the impact. I landed in a patch of damp grass, and for a split second the quietness of the surrounding area gave me hope. But that hope was short-lived as I heard footsteps approaching. I darted away from the building and into the shadows of the nearby trees. My heart pounded in my ears as I tried to gauge my surroundings. I knew I had to find Richard, to regroup and figure out what was going on. Then I saw them. A cluster of figures moving in the distance, their silhouettes unnatural against the glow of the few scattered streetlights. My blood ran cold. I wasn't safe yet. I wanted to call out, but fear clawed at my throat. Instead, I crouched low, praying the darkness would shield me as I desperately searched for an escape route. That was when I felt something wet on my hand. I glanced down and froze again. It was blood, thick and fresh. "Help us." The whisper echoed once more, now louder. I took a shaky breath. Someone was really out there, and I might have just inadvertently signed up for something I couldn't possibly fathom. I crouched behind a tree, my fingers trembling as I inspected the blood on my hand. Panic surged through me again. but I forced myself to breathe. I needed to focus. The figures in the distance moved closer, their forms becoming more distinct under the harsh light. There were at least 4 of them. They walked with an unnatural gait, almost gliding rather than striding. My instinct screamed for me to stay hidden, but curiosity tugged at me. I had to know more. I strained my ears, hoping to catch snippets of their conversation. The words were slurred and indistinct, a language that felt foreign and wrong. Then, I noticed something. One of the figures was looking directly in my direction. I froze, hoping the shadows would hide me, but instinct told me they could sense me. The figure tilted its head, eyes glinting like shards of glass in the dim light. The others halted, sensing my presence as well. I held my breath, the air thick with tension. Would they come for me? In that split second, I made a decision. I couldn't wait to find out. I turned on my heel and dashed deeper into the woods, my heart racing as the branches clawed at my arms and legs. I could hear them moving behind me, the haunting whispers growing louder. "Help us," they echoed. And I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a command rather than a plea. I pushed myself harder, fueled by the need to escape. Then out of nowhere, I stumbled over a root and fell to the ground. Pain shot through my ankle, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I scrambled back to my feet, the whispering figures still pursuing me. I caught a glimpse of a clearing ahead. Maybe I could find safety there, or at least a moment to collect my thoughts. As I burst through the trees, I froze once more. The clearing was a nightmare. Strange symbols marked the ground, illuminated by a cluster of flickering candles. Figures sat around them, their chants filling the air like a sick melody. They were not just after me. They were waiting for something. A shiver shot down my spine as I backed away, but my foot caught on something. A discarded piece of fabric hung from a nearby bush. I yanked it free and recognized it instantly. It was Sarah's scarf. Adrenaline surged again. Where had they taken her? Was she part of this? The realization hit me hard. I had to find her. Suddenly the chanting stopped. Every face turned toward me, their eyes narrowing in unison. I didn't have time to think. I turned and bolted back into the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I glanced back, they were moving, all too quickly, closing the distance between us. I needed to push past the fear, to keep moving. Then from somewhere deeper within the woods I heard it, a familiar voice calling my name. I followed the sound of her voice as if it were a lifeline stretching through the darkness. "Sarah!" I yelled, but it only echoed back to me, hollow and haunting. The figures behind me were relentless, their whispers now a cacophony urging me to stop, to join them. I shook my head, gritting my teeth against the fear clawing at my throat. I stumbled through the trees, branches scratching at my face. I had to keep going. I couldn't let them catch me. The voice called out again, clearer this time. "Help me!" My heart dropped at her tone. I couldn't abandon her now. I pushed on, desperate to reach her, my ankle throbbing with every step. My mind raced with questions. Where could she be? What were those gathered in the clearing planning? I skidded to a halt, breathing heavily. The woods opened up around me. Up ahead I could see a faint glow seep through a cluster of trees. I sprinted toward it, hoping it held answers, or at least a chance to catch my breath. As I approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a small stone structure nestled between the trees. A dilapidated cabin, its door creaked on rusted hinges barely hanging on. My instincts warned me to stay away, but Sarah's voice echoed in my ears. I had no choice. "Please help me." I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust, and I coughed. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing a single room littered with broken furniture and scattered papers. "Sarah?" I called out, but the only response was the creaking of the cabin. Moving deeper inside, I spotted something, a glimmer of red fabric caught on a broken chair. I rushed over, hoping for a sign, any sign that she was here. It was another piece of Sarah's scarf, dirty and crumpled. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach. She had to be close. But then I heard it. The sound of footsteps behind me. Not the soft rustling of leaves, but heavy, deliberate steps. Fear surged back, sharp and hot. I turned quickly, heart racing, ready to defend myself. There was nothing there. Just the shadowy corners of the room and the oppressive silence. I took a hesitant step backward but froze as I heard a hiss, low and ominous. I whipped around, scanning the dim corners for the source. It was here, in the cabin with me, whatever had been chasing me. Panic clawed at my throat. That's when I saw it, a flash of movement against the far wall, dark and fast. I barely had time to react. I bolted toward the door, adrenaline surging. I didn't care what was behind me, I just needed to escape. But as I reached the threshold, the air crackled with energy and a chilling voice whispered, "You won't leave without her." Everything went dark. I gasped as consciousness flooded back and I found myself lying on the cold floor of the break room. The lights flickered dimly above, but the atmosphere felt different. Charged, almost electric. I sat upright slowly, confusion washing over me. The door was still closed and silence wrapped around me like a heavy fog. "Where is everyone?" I murmured, pushing myself to my feet. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been somewhere else. Not just the cabin, but somewhere more sinister. The memories blended into shadows, fugitive and elusive. I opened the door just a crack, peering into the hallway. The dimness stretched out like a void. My heart raced with uncertainty, but I had to move. Sarah, Richard, were they safe? I turned the knob and pushed the door open fully, stepping cautiously into the hallway. As I moved deeper into the building, the air grew heavier, thick with an unseen weight that pressed against my chest. It felt like something, alive, was waiting, lurking just out of sight. I heard a faint rustling, and before I could react, a shadow darted past. The whispers coiled around me again. "Help us. Help us." "Stop," I shouted, feeling the tremor in my voice. "What do you want from me?" The shadows seemed to amplify my fear, swelling and swirling around my feet, dragging me back deeper into the unknown. I fought against the compulsion to succumb. I stumbled back toward the break room, feeling the panic surge again. My instinct screamed at me to barricade myself inside. Then I heard it. A familiar voice calling out, "Help me. Sarah?" I turned, straining to locate her. The sound came from the direction of the basement. I hesitated only a moment before taking off down the hallway, following the echoes of her desperate plea. As I descended the stairs, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony threatening to swallow me whole. I rounded a corner and froze in my tracks at what lay before me. Room 17 stood at the end of the corridor, its door ajar, light spilling out from the gap like welcoming arms. With every ounce of courage, I approached the door. The shadows shifted around me, and fear twisted my stomach. The whispers urged me to retreat, but the call of Sarah drowned them out, spurring a fierce determination within. I grabbed the handle and pushed the door open wide. Inside, it was a small, decrepit room filled with dim light. I looked around frantically, calling out, "Sarah!" But the room was empty, save for a series of old charts, stark and haunting, tacked to the walls. My heart sank as I recognized the names listed: Helen, Richard, Sarah, and others I remembered from the files. Then I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly. Richard stood there, looking ashen, his eyes wide with panic. "You shouldn't have come here." "Where's Sarah?" I gasped, taking a step closer, but he shook his head, backing away. "They're still in the shadows," he said, voice trembling. "They take you and then you don't come back." The weight of his words pressed hard on my chest. "What?" "We have to find her." But as I spoke, I could feel the darkness moving closer, whispering and swirling at the very edges of my vision. The walls pulsated with a strange energy, vibrating with malevolence. "Too late," he shouted suddenly, and I turned. The door slammed shut by an unseen force, sealing us inside. The glow from the room faded, replaced by a deep, chilling darkness that seemed to reach for us. "No, not like this." My mind raced, but the shadows coiled tighter around Richard. He reached out, eyes filled with an inexplicable understanding, and I felt an icy grip on my own heart. "Find her," he urged. There was a flicker of light in his gaze, a haunting ache that reminded me of all the names associated with this cursed room. "You'll understand when you see." And then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness, leaving me alone once more. Panicking, I clawed at the walls, trying desperately to find another way out. But the shadows rose, thin tendrils snaking toward me like searching hands, pulling me deeper into despair. "Help me!" I screamed, grasping for anything that felt real. I needed a sign, a reason to stay grounded in this madness. Then I remembered the list, the names that hadn't faded from my mind. "Help us," I whispered again to the void. "I want to help you, but I can't do it alone." The shadows drew closer, brushing against my skin, chilling and probing. But rather than fear, I felt a warmth ignite in my heart, a connection that whispered of understanding. The shadows hesitated just for a moment. "Take me to them," I begged, my voice breaking. "Show me where Sarah is." Everything went dark. When my eyes reopened, I found myself outside, standing in that small clearing where the strange signs lay etched in the ground, lit by flickering candles. Figures gathered once more, but this time they turned to face me, their expressions a blend of longing and sorrow. "Help us," Sarah said, stepping forward from the shadows. Her appearance was frail, yet her voice was certain, filled with an unyielding hope. "We've been waiting for you." I took a shaky step toward her, feeling the familiar pull of the past flood my heart. "You are all here, but how can I help?" "The same way we cried for help," she whispered, glancing at the spirit surrounding her. "You must connect with us." My heart thumped wildly in my chest. Could this be the resolution I sought? Or would it draw me deeper into the grip of darkness? As I held Sarah's gaze, I heard whispers again, swelling into a living force. "I'll do it." I took a breath and stepped further into the circle, ready to face the unknown. In those hazy seconds, everything shifted, and I was enveloped in that pulsating energy, the division between light and dark blurring together. There was power here, raw and electric, thrumming at the edges of my consciousness. And then, in that moment, I understood. This connection was not just about escape or answering a call. It was about facing what lay hidden in the darkness, resolving the pain that had claimed so many lives. But as the shadows tightened around me again, I sensed the truth would remain obscured, entangled in the web of these souls who had ushered me here. I felt the grip of the unknown define me, forcing me to confront the questions that would echo long after the night. As the light began to fade, I caught a glimpse of Richard watching from the shadows with a whisper on his lips, the truth echoing in my heart. "Help us."